We will finish the Gown of the Green Knight today.
By God.
Whether we get to Chaucer, pick up page 287, and I believe we left off, we were discussing Sir Gawain's nature, where he says, fear of your blow taught me cowardice. This is 2379. Fear of your blow taught me cowardice, to give way to covetousness, be false to my nature, and then he uses in a positive phrase to describe or define his nature. The generosity and fidelity expected of knights. Okay? Now I am false and unworthy. Okay? That adjective false, what's he really mean by that?
I'm a fake.
Yeah, pretty much. The whole pentangle, it's a sham. The whole thing just crumbled. Okay? And unworthy. Notice he doesn't have something after that unworthy. Because when we use that word unworthy today, if we use it, most people don't, how's it used?
Unworthy of.
I'm unworthy of you. I'm unworthy of this. He means what? I am not worthy. I'm worth nothing. I am nothing. That's what he's saying. Okay? And have always dreaded treachery and deceit. Okay, so why? Why does he mention treachery and deceit? Because he thinks he's just done both of those. How treachery? We think of treachery as you betray someone. You become a traitor. How is he using treachery?
He's betrayed his code.
He's betrayed his code. What else?
He betrayed the Lord of the Castle.
He betrayed the Lord of the Castle. He was a traitor to the Lord of the Castle. He was a traitor to his nature. Okay? Kind of what I'm getting at is, has Sir Gawain hit bottom yet? Or is he still kind of falling? He's trying to stop. He's trying to grab onto the pit as he's sliding down. Okay? He hasn't hit bottom yet. And we'll see why in a bit. Hopefully not too long a bit. So, treachery and deceit. I've always dreaded treachery and deceit. May misfortune and grief befall both. That is, may misfortune and grief befall both treachery and deceit. He's not saying, may I suffer misfortune and deceit. Okay? He's saying, may these things, what? Be done away with by misfortune and grief. Sir, humbly I confess, my good name is marred. Is that really a confession? It's because you're a moron.
It's not really a confession. Like the Green Knight watched all this happen.
Yeah, but notice what he says, I confess. Okay? I don't care what your religious beliefs are, etc., but assume for a moment you're Catholic. And I don't care if you are Catholic. Okay, you can correct me if you want. But assume for a moment you're Catholic, and you go into the confessional, and you say to the priest, Father, forgive me for I have sinned. What have you done? And you say, my good name is marred. My reputation has been slandered. If the priest is a good priest, what should the priest say? Who the hell do you think you are? That's what the priest should say. Why? Because according to, quote, all branches, doesn't matter, Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant, all branches of Christian theology essentially say what?
You have no reputation?
Yeah, kind of. Post-lapsarian, nice big word, what does it mean? What happens if you are an alcoholic and you relapse?
Go back and drinking.
Post-fall is what that means. After the fall of Adam and Eve in the garden, we all what? We all kind of have a bad rep. Why? It's deserved. He's saying, my good name is marred. What's it marred by, though? his own actions. So what's that say about his good name? Maybe it was full of deceit before. That is, maybe he wasn't what everybody at this castle described him as. What did one of the early people who met him say? Shoot, we got Sir Gawain in here. Now we're going to learn what? The model of good speech and the epitome of all manners. Maybe that's not true. Maybe, just maybe. What did Sir Gawain say about himself at the very beginning of the poem? Shoot, I ain't nothing. Only reason I'm here is because of you, Uncle Artie. So, was that false humility? Or was it real humility? It's unclear. Let me regain your trust. Next time I'll be on guard. What's he mean next time? Well, the exchange of winnings occurred how? One night, hey, here's what we're going to do tomorrow. I'm going to go hunt. You give me whatever you catch here. Cool. Second night, well, you agreed. You fulfilled the oath. Let's do it again. Cool. Third night. Way to go. You've done it 2 nights now. Third time's what? Today we say third time's a charm. Why? Because you screwed up the first 2 times. He says third throw. What does that mean? It all rides on this one. The first 2 don't really count. The third one Sir Gawain fails on, and now he says, next time I'll be on guard. Let's do it again. That's essentially what he's saying. At least I think so. What next time? I mean, is the Green Knight going to go all green again and go, here? Oh, let me have that back first. Get it nice and tight on tightly green. Swing. No, he's not going to do it. The other man, notice, laughs and graciously says. Notice, graciously, and he's laughing. Why? What's the whole thing been? Go back a previous year. It's a game. It's a game. He laughs and graciously says, the wrong you did me I consider wiped out. Why? Well, he's going to tell us. You have so clearly confessed yourself. Like the 3rd or 4th time confession's been mentioned. You have so clearly confessed yourself, admitted your fault, done honest penance on the edge of my blade. See, in the rite of confession, the penitent goes to the priest, says, I've done X, Y, Z. The priest says, you shouldn't have done that. Prays a prayer, absolving that person of those sins, and then the rest of it is gives that individual penance. That is, you got to do something. Why? To really show that you are penitent. What's the penance? It might be, say, a couple extra Hail Marys. It might be help the poor. It might be today's judicial system, community service. That's a form of penance. Okay? That shows people, oh, I really didn't mean to do this. But who usually, I shouldn't go there. Who usually gets community service?
Lower level offenders.
Do they? Lower level usually what? Lock them up. Okay? Like, I would almost lay money, if I had any in my wallet, I would almost lay money on this book and say, I'll bet half those people involved in the elite university admission scam, I'll bet half of them don't see a day inside jail. I bet some of them will get community service. Like what? Help poor kids get into elite schools, maybe.
If only.
Yeah, if only. So, the wrong you did me I consider wiped out. You have so cleanly confessed yourself, admitted your fault, done honest penance on the edge of my blade. How did he do penance? He bent over. He willingly took it. Did he know he was doing penance at the time? and I think the poet might be telling us something thereby, that for those in the society of the poem, 1375, 1400, people might be doing penance without being aware that they're doing penance.
Does it count then?
Yeah, I think so. Well, in terms of the theology of the medieval church, yeah. Why? Because according to the theology of the medieval church, all suffering is tied to Christ's suffering.
But if you don't understand at the time that you're paying for something, then that's my question. Does it count? I mean, I understand what you're saying. I guess it's a separate question.
Yeah. And I think the medieval church would answer, yeah, it does count, even if you're not aware of it. Who was it? Anselm or Aquinas? One of the medieval saints said something about, sometimes even if the intentions aren't right, if the actions are, the actions overcome the intentions. Here's an example from Paul. Let me ask Lavania's question first, and then I'll get back to it.
Wouldn't that be the same as getting absolved of a crime you had not committed but you confessed to anyway? Like I'm going to do this, and it's now you're okay.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. It kind of brings up the issue of indulgences, but I don't think that's quite the same. Because the way the medieval church looked at it is, if you're suffering, it's because of sins. Now, it might not be some immediate, it might be this. It might be you're suffering because of what Adam and Eve did. Because the medieval Catholic Church essentially said that. Okay? But it also suggested, and the early church suggests this, that, as I said, all suffering is related to Christ's suffering. And you read from the beginning of the New Testament to the end, and what do the writers essentially say? If you're a Christian, don't expect what? Don't expect life to be easy. Life's going to be what? Take up your cross. It's going to be painful. It's going to be hard. Okay? And Paul even talks about, suffering things for things that I'm not aware right now that I've done. Okay? So, in a modern day confession, people can go to confession and they can, say their confession and they can end it with kind of a general catch-all phrase. And for the things I have done that I am not aware of. Because here's an example. How can every person in this room, quote unquote, sin against another person unknowingly? I mean, if I walk up and I take something of somebody's, I knowingly do that, right? And even if I'm a kleptomaniac, I'm kind of aware of it. But what else can I do? What if you walk past me in the hallway and you say hello and I just keep on walking? What have I just done? Totally ignored you. Now, in some branches of Christianity, that's a sin. That's a sin. That's a big sin. Why? Because that person you've just walked by is a person made in the image and likeness of God. So you've essentially said, yeah, screw you, God. It's Matthew 25. What does Christ say in the parable of the Last Judgment? Inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it to me. Inasmuch as you haven't done it to them, you didn't do it to me. So, if you said, hey, you did it to me. If you said, F you did it to me. Okay? That kind of thing. So, you've done honest penance. I declare you absolved of that offense and washed as clean. So, he is kind of a priest, right? And this is all happening at the Green Chapel. And declare you washed as clean as if you had never transgressed since the day you were born. How clean is that? It's pretty clean. It's not totally clean. Medieval, theology, everybody's born tainted with original sin. You still got that little dark part in you, even as a 1-hour-old baby, that if you could verbalize it, and you had a toy and a 1-hour-old baby was next to you, you go, mine! Stab a little bit. So, as if you had never transgressed since the day you were born. I think he brings that up. Why? Because he's talking about the nature of humanity. And what did Sir Gawain say back at 2380? To give way to covetousness, to be false to my nature. Where he implies his nature is what? Yeah, I'm clean. I'm perfect. I'm good. I am generous and faithful. Well, he was neither of those. And I make you a gift of my gold-bordered belt. Since it is green like my gown, Sir Gawain, you may remember this meeting in the world where you mingle with princes of rank. So, you can keep that green belt. Why? As a reminder. A reminder where? When he goes back into the world. Is he not in the world? I mean, literally, yes, he is in the world. So what does the Green Knight mean? Well, what's this place they've been at like? Louder? Like they were in a game. Hunger Games, you know? Kind of. It's like they were what? Removed from the world. It's what? It's a place of testing, so to speak. Well, all you have to do, and this poet was probably familiar with this, all you have to do is read the early history of the Christian church and what happened after Christianity was made legal by Constantine, 315 or so AD. Prior to then, what was happening to Christians? Persecutions. Bad persecutions. Okay? Christianity becomes legal and they're no longer persecuted. It's no longer illegal. They're no longer being tortured. Now they can build churches, go to churches, etc. So what did a lot of Christians start doing? They said, life's too easy. So they left the cities, they left the world, and went out into deserts. Okay? Where? Where Christianity began. Palestine, Egypt, etc. Okay? We alluded to this a little bit when we talked about the wanderer and the seafarer, okay, and pilgrimages. What did the seafarer say he wanted to do? He wanted to find a foreign home. He wanted to find a home elsewhere, okay? Many of these early Christian monks did what? They left the world, went off in the desert. Why? To try themselves, to prove themselves, to test themselves, to purify themselves. Not because being around people was bad, but because they wanted to get the bad that was inside out. Okay? If you've never tried this, and I don't mean try it in a religious / Christian context, just, be alone by yourself sometime for several hours with no distractions. No lights, no music, no sound, nothing. And what will start to happen, usually fairly quickly, your mind will start to play tricks on you. And pretty soon it can't find anything out there to chew up. So what does it do? Read Samuel Johnson's Rasselas. It does what? If it can't find anything out there to chew on, it turns inward. It starts to eat itself. Here's who's the company that has this? Microsoft. Microsoft has a room in one of their buildings in Seattle. It's the quietest place on earth. It's smaller than this. If I remember right, it's like 27, 30 square feet. So 3 by 10 or 5 by 5. It's really, really small. And the ceiling and the walls are all covered with all this soundproof acoustic stuff. Why do they use it? They use it to help develop better headphones and things like that. It's literally the quietest place on earth. The longest anybody has been able to stay in that room is 45 minutes. Because it's so quiet that if you go in, because they don't bring phones or anything, you go in there, it's so quiet, you will start to hear your heartbeat. here. See, I've just been quiet for a little bit. And if you can hear it, some of those lights are buzzing. Well, there's no buzzing in this room. And some people have only been able to to go in this room for like 5 minutes because they feel like they're going crazy. Why? Because the mind starts to do all kinds of things with them. Okay? So he goes on. As if you never transgressed. So he says, you can have the sash. And remember this meeting, what? In the world, that is when you go back into the world. So this has been your place of trial. This has been your place of testing. What's he been testing? His spirit. He's not been testing his strength. He's testing his spirit. That's where courage comes from. Courage is what? It's the heart. Okay? So, when you go back into the world, where you mingle with princes of rank. Well, who does he mean, princes of rank? Yeah, he does mean Lancelot, but he means Arthur ultimately. It will be a true token of the exploit of the Green Chapel among chivalrous knights. What's a token? Always. It's a sign. It's a symbol of something. In the Dream of the Rood was called a token. Okay? I mean, even if it's a token that you have to use to get into a bus, to go through a turnstile or something, it's a sign or symbol of what? Admittance. You belong there. Okay? So, what's the token going to be for? What's he saying? You go back to Camelot, you wear this green sash. What are they going to ask?
Where'd you get that?
Ooh, where'd you get the fancy green belt? You know, where can we get one? And he's going to say, I know a guy. And you can come back here next year. Come back to my castle at the New Year. We will see out the revelry of this high feast with joy. In other words, and I won't be lopping your head off. You won't be lopping my head. And we'll have fun. That is, we will have real revelry. He pressed him earnestly. Come on, come back next year. Come on. It'll be fun. And I will reconcile you with my wife, who was your cunning foe. What 3 animals did the knight kill? First day, deer. Or deer's cunning?
Yeah.
She's stupid as all get out.
Boar.
Boar? Are they cunning?
No, it's strong.
They're a little bit more cunning than a deer. A deer will look at, you're driving down the road, middle of the highway. Boom! Yeah, I'm stupid. Okay? A boar will at least move. What's the third animal?
Fox.
What adjective do we almost always use to describe a fox? Sly. Cunning. Okay? Tricky little buggers. Supposedly. Every now and then I'll see one running down my street or down the neighbors' houses. So, notice what happens. Kisses. Kisses. Kisses.
Plus.
And sash. But she offers him a couple other things too, right? A ring. Round, circle, things go in and out of it. Yeah. The belt. Okay. If you didn't catch that before, you should have. Sorry. Not just my dirty mind, believe me. A lot of people have pointed this out. Okay. So why does he say reconcile? Did Sir Gawain part from her, as enemies?
Oh, but he might be kind of mad now.
You might, I don't. What did she part from him happy?
No, he rejected her and she said, I feel hurt.
Really? I mean, if you got a girlfriend. Nope, not me.
Not looking for one.
And not looking for one either. Wow. I mean, what happens to lawn? How many of you read Lawn Ball? Now, every hand goes up, I know, even though they're not going up. Every hand goes up. What happens happens to Launval? Okay, in that story, Launval, who's poor, Arthur isn't giving him stuff, goes off in the meadow one day on his horse. By the way, if you're a medieval knight, don't ever go off into the meadows by yourself and fall asleep. Bad stuff always happens. He goes off, a couple of drop-dead gorgeous women find him, walk him off to their mistress, who is the fairy queen, essentially. And she gives him what? Herself, her love, and everything he can want. So when he gets back home, what happens? He discovers his men are no longer dressed in rags. They've now got the greatest livery outfit the place is known. His pantry is full. He's throwing parties left and right. People are like, man, Launval's generous. And one evening, one afternoon, all the knights are having fun outside, doing stuff, showing off for the chicks up, sitting up on the tower. And there's Guinevere looking down. And so her ladies in waiting each go down and they pair up with a different knight. And she looks at Launval and goes, And so what does she do? She plays, if you're familiar with the biblical story of Joseph, Potiphar's wife to Joseph. She says, Launval, you can have me if you want. What is she really saying? Yes, yes, I will deign to have sex with you if you want. And he's like, no. Okay, courtly love, out the window. No, I don't want to have sex with you. She's like, nobody's ever said that to me. By the way, in most Arthurian literature, remember what I said about fortune the other day? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's Guinevere. If it moves, she sleeps with it. Okay? So, she says, oh, that's right, I heard about you. You don't go that way, do you? You like little boys. He's like, how dare you? No, I don't like little boys. And what does he do? He breaks his promise to his fairy lover and says, I love and am loved by one who is so much more beautiful. You look like her scullery maids are more beautiful than you were. The women who empty her chamber pots are more beautiful. And she's like, she tells Arthur, off with his head. Upshot of the story is what? She shows up. And what does she do? There's the round table. They've got a judge. She goes, okay, guys. There's Guinevere. You're mine. Yeah, I thought so. And she and Launval ride off to happiness. Okay? Reconcile you with my wife who was your cunning foe. Well, Guinevere was a cunning foe too. The difference is she here wasn't serious. In Launval, Guinevere was serious. She really wanted to sleep with Launval. Why? Probably because she hadn't slept with him yet. She'd had the other nights.
It was his turn.
It was his turn. It was Tuesday. And Sir Gawain says, no, indeed. Takes his helmet off. Gives the Lord thanks. I've stayed long enough. Good fortune attend you. May he who gives all honors soon send you reward. That's not Arthur. That's God. That's God. So, what's he just said? Good native Southern English. Bless your heart. God bless you. That's what he's just said. Now, he should be a little bit upset still, right? And commend me to that gracious one, your lovely wife. You, commend me, both the one, oh yeah, not just your wife, by the way. And the other one of those honorable ladies who have so cleverly deluded their knight with their game. Notice who introduces the other lady. It's Sir Gawain. Or did I just misread that? No, that's Sir Gawain speaking. Did the Green Knight say anything about Morgan Le Fay? Yet? No. Notice, your wife and that other lady, they what? they deluded me. What does it mean to be deluded?
Trick.
Tricked? How? Delude comes from
Illusion.
Luke's illusion sight. They made me not see right. But it is no wonder if a fool acts insane. See, he should have shut up after the word game. Why? Because now he's stepping into the wife of Bath's prologue. So he's totally unaware of it. I mean that facetiously because Chaucer might be aware of this. I don't think that the poet of Sir Gawain of the Green Knight has necessarily read Chaucer, but it's possible Chaucer is familiar with this. Anyways, it is no wonder if a fool acts insanely and is brought to grief through womanly wiles. Every one of you women in here, it's all your fault. By the way, an old folk etymology of woman was what? Woe to man.
Yes.
So, if a fool acts insanely and is brought to grief through womanly wiles, and what does he do? It all started with Eve. Eve was the problem. If Adam had only said, screw you, Eve, I'm not eating that apple, then what? Nothing. Literally nothing. And Adam would still be alive and lonely in the Garden of Eden, all by his lonesome. Okay? So, what does he do? Sir Gawain goes on this great, what's often been called anti-feminist harangue, polemic. Who does he mention? He doesn't even mention Eve by name. He just mentions, so was Adam beguiled by one, like she who shall not be named. You know? And then Solomon by, how several? 1,000? What is it? 300 wives, 700 concubines? Or it's the other way around? 700 wives, 300 concubines. God, was utterly crazy. Samson, Delilah, David, Bathsheba.
Why do you think Delilah and Bathsheba got named?
Well, I don't know, but let's talk about those for a minute. Okay, so Solomon's aren't named. Delilah, okay, biblical story. You got to admit what's there in the biblical story. Eve does tempt Adam. Yeah, she's tempted first, okay, but she then tempts Adam, okay. Solomon, okay, I'm assuming out of those 1,000 women, one of them tempts him, right? And just, tricks him up somehow, okay. Solomon, Samson, Delilah really did tempt and trick him. How many of you are familiar with the story of David and Bathsheba? Okay, Megan?
David sees Bathsheba bathing out the window and then calls her in, rapes her, gets her pregnant, sends her husband back for more to try to get him to have sex with her so that he would think it's his. He doesn't have sex with her because he's an honorable man, and then David sends him to the front lines to get killed.
And in a perfect nutshell, I mean, that's perfect, right? So Uriah, her husband, goes off to the front lines, the hottest part of the war, and David is sure to tell his captain, make sure he goes to the hottest part of the battle, okay? And he's killed. And then what happens? He takes Bathsheba into his house and they, quote unquote, get married. The child is stillborn, okay? Was Bathsheba lying on the rooftop? So that's the description in the Bible. Is she lying on the rooftop with a big old sign saying, you, David, look over here. You, and she's waving it, trying to catch his attention? No. She's just bathing on the rooftop. And David, who is that? Brings her in. She didn't tempt him, other than she existed. And suffered much grief, since these men were ruined by the women's wiles, and the Middle English word is wiles, W-I-L-E-S, the sneaky, cunning aspect that all you women have that us men are totally devoid of. We have no ability to do the same kind of thing because we're all pure as the wind-driven snow, okay? Catch the sarcasm, hopefully. It would be a great gain to love women and not trust them. How's he finish? If a man knew how. We can't help ourselves. Shakespeare has a great sonnet about lust. I mean, it's one of the greatest descriptions of lust, and says, you know, if only men knew how to shun this hell, which is heaven in the taking, sex. Okay? So, these were the noblest men of old. What's Sir Gawain doing? Well, I'm in pretty good company. Me and Adam, yeah, we're like brothers. Me and Samson, yeah, we're like brothers. Me and Solomon, yeah, we're like brothers. Me and David. Well, he just compared himself with, you know, quote unquote, biblical history at least, some of the greatest men who ever lived. What's this telling us about Sir Gawain? Well, he's got a high opinion of himself. He's back to reading his press clippings and believing them. Beguiled were they all by women they thought kind. Kind there does not mean nice. Doesn't have that meaning at all. What does it mean? It means kind, like when you say, what kind of car do you have? What do you mean when you use that kind of language?
Oh, dang. Hamlet says this.
Yes, he does.
Nature, natural.
Nature. These women were not natural, he's saying. I'm not talking about, you know, straight, lesbian, not that. He means they went against nature in tempting. What does he mean that he went against nature? It's not supposed to be in human nature to behave this way. Notice my qualification. Supposed to be. It's not how humanity is supposed to be. Why? Go back to this phrase I had up here. Post-lapsarian. Okay, so if you have post, what comes before that? Before the fall. Then how were Adam and Eve created according to the biblical story? Good. Perfect. Okay? So, by women they thought kind. Since I too have been tricked, then I should pardon fine. That is, I was tricked. Well, yeah, then I should be pardoned. What's he just done? He just did exactly what Adam did just before this. Actually, it's after this. What did Adam do when God came to him?
This woman you gave me.
Wasn't me, God. This woman you gave me to be a help. She what? She led me astray. She tempted me. Which is, you know, a lot of the early church writers essentially said, if Adam had said, and it's supposition, if Adam had said, I ate of the fruit, and just said that, and didn't mention Eve, God would have said, okay, you admitted your fault. Way to go. Which is why many of the church fathers will say, you know, if one wants to be really, really good, really, really quote unquote holy, cover up your brother's sin or sister's sin. Act like they didn't do it. In fact, if you can, take credit for it yourself. That is, take the punishment for yourself rather than having them be punished. Why? Because they believed if Adam had done that, this part wouldn't have happened. Everything would have changed as a result. But he didn't. He did what? He blamed somebody else. So God looks at Eve, and what does she do? Well, I didn't do it on my own. This stupid snake told me. What did the snake do? Yeah, it's me, bastard. I want to be God, you know. But for your belt. Yeah, I'll take that. Has he learned his lesson yet? No, he hasn't. It comes at the end. Okay? I accept it gratefully, not for its wonderful gold. I can't believe it's 20 after 10. I've spent this much time. And we've only done what? 60 lines, maybe?
So fast and available.
Oh, shut up. I accept it gratefully, not for its wonderful gold, nor for the girdle itself, nor its silk, nor its long pendants, nor its value, nor the honor, nor its workmanship, etc., etc. But I shall look at it often as a sign of my failing. Okay? So it won't be a memento mori, because that is a reminder of death. It'll be a memento, I'm trying to think of the Latin. Probably something culpi, fault, a reminder of my fault. Mea culpa means my bad. Okay? So, a reminder of my feeling. And when I write in triumph, recall with remorse the corruption and frailty of the perverse flesh, how quick it is to pick up blotches of sin. Like, he's just going to be riding one day with his horse on, and all of a sudden, sin's going to jump up and glom onto him. That's the language he's using. Notice the church said what? No, you damn fool, you're sinful. Notice the suffix. The adjectival suffix means what? Full of. Okay? And so when pride and my knightly valor stirs me, oh, that's right, I'm Sir Gawain. I'm the best there is. A glance at this girdle will humble my heart. Why? Because it'll remind me that sin jumped up at me and bit me in the you-know-what. In other words, sin is kind of like the girdle. The way he's talking about it, it's like I can take it on or off. Like, ooh, I want to sin, therefore I will, rather than it being inside him. But one thing, I got one request. Hope it doesn't offend you. Since you are the Lord of the country I have dwelt in, honorably treated in your house, may God reward you who holds up the heavens. Who are you? What's your real name? I know you're not the Green Knight. He said, oh, Berdelac de Haute Desert. His name means, if you take apart his name, it means the green lake by the high desert. And ever since people first began writing about this poem, they started looking for a green lake by a high desert in England. High desert? Well, there aren't any deserts in England. What are there, however? There are moors, the Yorkshire moors, or the Yorkshire dales, as they're also called. Well, the dales are the little valleys. The moors are the highlands. Okay? If you're into Harry Potter, Gryffindor is from the moors. All right? So, a green lake by a high moor. And people have been all over England, and they found all kinds of green lakes by high moors. Is this it? Is this where he's from? Probably not. Because he's probably not real. Oh, what else? Through the power of Morgan Le Fay, who lives under my roof, and her skill in learning, well taught in magic arts, she has acquired many of Merlin's occult powers. For she had love dealings at an earlier time with that accomplished scholar. Love dealings. I love that. They hooked up. As all your knights know at home, Morgan the goddess. Well, traditional, medieval, Catholic theology. Remember the line in the original? Which one is it? The original Avengers? They've captured Loki. They're on the plane. They're getting ready to take him somewhere. Thor shows up. Thor takes Loki, jumps out the back of the plane. Cap suits up. He's getting ready. Iron Man goes off after him. Cap suits up. He gets ready. And she goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm going to go after him." She goes, "You better not. He's a god." He goes, "God doesn't dress like that, ma'am. And I'm pretty sure there's only one God. There aren't any goddesses." Okay? But this poem comes out partly, at least, of the Celtic tradition. Okay? And there's lots of goddesses. And Morgan, by the way, ooh, she's a big one. She's not one you want to mess with. Plus, this is Arthurian. What do they know about Morgan? What should he know? Well, he's going to be told very quickly. What relation is she to Arthur? Half-sister, if I remember correctly. Okay? Morgan the goddess, therefore, is her name. No one, however haughty or proud, she cannot tame. And he's getting to his point. She sent me in this shape to your splendid hall to make trial of your pride. The your there, that's not your singular. It's your general. Your plural. Whose pride? Oh, you people at Camelot who think you're so high and mighty. And to judge the truth of the great reputation attached to the round table. Yes?
Is there a Morgan the goddess in any kind of, mythology?
Celtic.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's also in Celtic mythology, there's often something that comes before this, and I'm just drawing a blank on it. There's the Dagda, who is like the high god, the supreme god, okay? Pretty much in all Indo-European mythology, you've got pretty similar to the quote-unquote, you've got pretty similar to the Roman and the Greek pantheons, okay? So there's a Zeus. Zeus is Greek, right? What's the Roman version? Jupiter. The very names, Jupiter and Zeus, okay? In Indian, you have the Dias Patar. They're all the same. It's the sky god, the one with the thunderbolt. Yeah, question.
I was just say there's also the Morrigan.
Yeah, spelled Morriga, sometimes with one R. Okay? So, she sent me there to make trial of you. She sent me to drive you demented with this marvel, to have terrified Guinevere and caused her to die. She wanted Guinevere to die. Why? A little jealousy, maybe. Which one was Morgan? Short, squat, old, fat. The ugly one. Can you picture the Green Knight with her? No, he's got the beautiful wife. So, what else? That is she who is in my castle, the very old lady, who is actually your aunt, Arthur's half-sister. Good thing she didn't be the one to come tempt him, right? Because, Oedipus, weird stuff. The Duchess of Tintagel's daughter, whom noble Uther afterwards begot Arthur upon, who now is king. That doesn't mean Uther begot Arthur from Morgan. It's the Duchess of Tintagel is whom Uther begat Arthur on. The Duchess is also Morgan's mother, okay? Different fathers, though. Who now is king. So I entreat you, good sir, come back to the castle, say hello to your aunt. And he's thinking, no. Yeah, heck no. And make merry in my house. My servants all love you, so will I too, in my honor, as much as any man on earth for your great truth. Sir Gawain says, no, can't stick around. They commend each other to the Prince of Paradise. It's God again. Separate there in the cold. He gets on his horse and he rides back home. I'm going to skip a bunch. He wears the belt how? Kind of. He wears it as a baldric across his body. That is, like this. Like a sash. Why? Because the poet is building to giving us the possible mythological origin story of the Order of the Garter, which is still in existence today. Every year, the Queen does what are called the Queen's Honors, where she makes people knights, where she makes people, commanders of the British Empire, usually actors and actresses and writers and things like that, So the guy, what's his name, who plays James Bond, he's a CBE, Commander of the British Empire, okay? It's just a nice title. So, he goes on. Sir Gawain returns. They thought it a wonder. 2491. The king kisses the knight, the queen too. Many true knights who came to embrace him. They're like, how'd you go? How'd it go? He describes all the hardships. He describes what happens at the chapel, the Green Knight's behavior, the lady's wooing, and finally the belt. He shows them the scar. Why is it important that he shows them the scar? That's proof. Really happened. Unless you want to be one of those, people who just doesn't believe anything and think, he whipped out the knife, That he received for his dishonesty at the Lord's hands in rebuke. Tormented by his tale, he groaned for grief and hurt. The blood burned in his face when he showed the shameful cut. The blood burned in his face. He wells up with shame when he shows them this cut. And he holds up the girdle. See, my lord, this belt caused the scar that I bear on my neck.
Oh
Yeah, it's the damn belt's fault. It made me lie. This is the injury and damage that I have suffered. For the cowardice and covetousness, look at the language, that what? Seized me like it came from without. Grabbed me. This is the token of the dishonesty I was caught committing. And now I must wear it as long as I live. Did the knight tell him he had to wear it as long as he lived? No. That's Sir Gawain saying it. For a man may hide his misdeed, but never erase it. Now he's starting to get at the truth. Whether he realizes it or not, or maybe the poet is starting to get at the truth. A man may hide his misdeed, but never erase it. For where once it takes root, the stain can never be lifted. What's the stain? A sin. Notice, once it takes root, it can't be lifted. What's the root of something? It's the source. It's the origin. The source or origin can't come from outside, right? It's got to come from inside. That's why I said, he says the sash does what? It teaches him cowardice and covetousness. And I said, no, it doesn't. It what? It shows. It reveals. It discloses what's inside. This is, and I think Sir Gawain is unaware of the real import of his words. But I don't think Arthur is, because something's going to be said in a moment. This is he says, once it takes root, the stain can never be lifted. Notice, the king consoles him. It's okay, Sir Gawain. It'll be better. Or it'll get better. And the whole court laughs. He just said something that's, like burying his soul, and they laugh. And courteously agrees that lords and ladies who belong to the table, each member of the brotherhood, they're all going to wear that belt. So they're going to have a whole bunch of them made. They're going to contact China, get everything made, A baldric of bright green, crosswise on the body, similar to Sir Gawain's, and worn for his sake. And that became part of the renown of the Round Table, and whoever afterwards wore it was always honored, as is set down in the most reputable books of romance. So in the time of Arthur, this adventure happened. What are we just told? The Order of the Garter began during the time of King Arthur. Well, we know, historically, you got a little footnote down there, according to Froissart, the order was instituted around the year 1344. Okay? So skip a little bit, get to the what's called the bob and wheel, 25-26. Many exploits before now have happened much like this. Now may the thorn-crowned God, that's Jesus, crown of thorns, bring us to his bliss. And then we get this little motto. Ani soit qui mal y pense. Ani, not remember this, right? Yep, soit. Qui mal y pense. Mal y pense. Did I have just one or did it have an E? No, that's it. Okay? Well, what does that mean? Look at the gloss. It's Old French. Evil be to him who evil thinks. That's the motto of the Garter. It's still the motto of the Garter today. If you are sworn into the Order of the Garter, you get the Garter, and it has this embroidered on it. So what does that motto mean? Evil be to him who evil thinks. St. Paul, can't remember which letter, says, for some people, eating meat is sinful. For other people, it's not. Why? Because for some people, they think eating meat is sinful. And for the others, they don't. That's it. If you think it's evil, then guess what? It is. If you think it's sinful for you, if you think it's evil for you, then for you, it is. Why? That's that little thing called the conscience. Go back to Beowulf. Think of Hrothgar's big long sermon. And he talks about the guy who rises in power. He rules a really long time. And then what happens? His conscience goes to sleep. And he wants more power. He wants more stuff, etc., etc. Okay? Why? Because that little thing in him that tells him you shouldn't. Why does he go to sleep? He's got everything going for him. The world, proverbially is his oyster. What does that phrase mean, by the way? If the world's your oyster, what do? You eat it. You take it. Okay? It also means what? It has what inside of it? What do oysters produce? Pearls. It has Christ told a parable about the pearl of great price. Okay? So, to finish Sir Gawain of the Green Knight, why does the poet tell the story? What does it have to do with Christmas? What does Sir Gawain learn? Let me put it this way. What does he blame? Does he blame himself?
No.
He primarily blames women. He does accept some blame. Okay. Does he totally blame it? No. So why does everybody else at the round table accept the green sash? This is what I think the poet is getting at. Because they say, what? They identify with him. Why? Because they're blaming women? I don't think so. I think the poet wants us to go a little bit deeper than that. I think the poet is trying to say, bingo. He does admit partially his fault. The Green Knight says what about him before he goes on his anti-women spiel? You are totally absolved. Okay, that's before. I don't know if the Green Knight after that after that, if he had more time, would say, come here. We need to do confession because you just blamed everybody else. Okay. He says, you've done your penance. That is, you've taken your lick, you've taken your pain, you've had your suffering. Now you're clean. Why? Because the Green Knight, when the Green Knight is talking about his sin, he's not getting necessarily at that deep inner thing that, Nathaniel Hawthorne's and Minister's Black Veil, that secret sin, everybody's, the one thing that everybody goes, this is mine. I'll tell you everything else. This is mine. God, you can't have this one, kind of the Gollum kind of character. Okay. Who's the audience? Is it peasants? No. Do peasants have a lot of time on their hands to think about sin and salvation? No. They're just trying to get by. Knights and ladies, especially, are if it was actually put into practice, are peasants practicing the courtly love tradition? They're practicing not starving to death. They're not going, Fred, your wife's pretty hot. The whole courtly love tradition says marriage. Marriage isn't a problem. Mind? No, they're not. Because what would happen if Joe said that to Fred?
Got to shovel the face.
Yeah, Joe'd be dead. If Fred's a normal guy. No, I mean it's differing level. Okay. All right. Huge shift now. Go from there to Chaucer. And I asked you to watch the video on the beginning of Chaucer. I think it might actually be 2. Maybe 10. On the general prologue. It's probably 2. On the general prologue. And which characters to be familiar with. But I want to get to the wife of Bath. Because I want to finish the wife of Bath's tale on Tuesday so I can give you your exam. I'll get your papers back on Tuesday so you know how you did and stuff. So I can get that so we can get forward. Because after next week, we've only got 7 more days. After next week, I think it's 7. We only have 7 more days because after next week is April. Next Thursday is the 29th, I think. 29th, 28th, something like that. Okay? So, the wife of Bath.
Every time I think about it, I'm like,
So, Chaucer gives us a description of the wife of Bath, and I will say this. When Chaucer describes his pilgrims in the general prologue, he gives us pretty detailed descriptions of them, and he's doing this for a reason. The pilgrims that we're going to be introduced to that will actually tell tales, and not all of them do, okay? Chaucer does this. He matches, if I can learn to write, the teller to the tale. What do I mean by that? I mean the kind of character the pilgrim is tells a tale that fits that character. For example, he begins with the knight. Why? The knight is the highest person in society. He's at the highest social status of society of all the people who are going on this journey. Okay? By the way, 29 pilgrims come into the Tabard Inn. The evening that Chaucer's persona, the character he creates, named Geoffrey Chaucer, okay, is staying at the Tabard Inn. Okay. So, there are a total of 30 people, Chaucer says, who will tell tales. 30 people, they're going to tell 2 tales going and 2 tales returning. Do the math. How many tales is that? 30 times 2 times 2. They're going to tell 120 tales. Why? Because Boccaccio, Giovanni Boccaccio, Italian poet, wrote a little book, being facetious there, called the Decameron. it's 100 tales. He has 10 people tell 10 tales. 10 people each night for 10 tales. Okay? These are people in the Decameron. These are people there in Italy. They leave the city. They go off to a villa. Why? Because of the plague. And to pass the time, 10 people each tell a tale over 10 successive nights. Okay? 100 tales. What's Chaucer doing? Ooh, I can do better than that. I will out-Boccaccio you, Boccaccio. I'm going to outdo you. But he doesn't. He ends up only telling 24? I think it's 24. Might be 22 tales. He's got 30 pilgrims. 29 plus Chaucer. He doesn't even give one for each. Okay? So, Canterbury Tales, it's often assumed, it's almost universally assumed, that Canterbury Tales is incomplete. Why? He died before he finished it. My Chaucer professor, a guy named Charles Moorman, if you decide to do a thing on Chaucer, you'll read stuff by him, who is one of the major 20th century critics on Chaucer. He argued Chaucer's Canterbury Tales is finished. And he does this because within the body, if you read the entire beginning to the end of the Canterbury Tales, okay, what we're told at the beginning is the guy who owns the Tabard Inn, the host. He gets named later in the story. His name is Harry Bailey. He's real. He was a real person in Chaucer's day. Okay? He's the one who says, hey, let's do this. To kill time as we're making our way to Canterbury, why don't you guys each tell 2 tales going and 2 tales coming? And I'll come along with you at my own cost. And on the return, after you've all told your tales, I will decide who told the best tale. And whoever I decide tells the best tale, we will all agree to pay that person's expenses. Everybody cool with that? Everybody agrees. And if somebody doesn't agree afterwards, then that person, I don't remember, has to pay something. Okay? So Harry Bailey comes up with this idea. This is the frame network that Chaucer gives us. Okay? So they're going to tell 2 tales going, 2 tales coming. Well, about halfway through, Chaucer says, in the mouth, I think it is of Harry Bailey, well, now that we're about halfway done with our tales, they're not even close to 60. And then when we get to the very end, just before the final tale in the Canterbury Tales, Harry Bailey says, now we have but 1 tale yet to hear. What Moorman argued is that this was Chaucer telling his readership, okay, I know I told you, you could expect 120. Ain't going to happen, folks. I'm going to die before then. So I'm going to give you 1 more. And then we're calling it quits. All right? Anyways, so he fits his pilgrims to his tales. So, for example, the knight. What kind of tale do you think a knight would tell? Just a wild guess.
Heroic tale.
Heroic tale. Louder?
Something about battle.
Okay. What else?
Honor.
Honor. What else?
Women.
Women. So battle, honor, women. You nailed it. The knight's tale is about 2 soldiers who are captured. They're in a tower, and one afternoon, one of them looks out a window and he says,
We're getting to you, man. We're getting to you.
channeling my wife's family from South Georgia. He sees this beautiful young woman, and almost immediately after that, the other guy sees her too. And what happens in medieval literature when a guy sees a beautiful woman? Bing, you know, they're both zapped. And now they each fall in love. And the tale, you know, they escape. They have to have a battle for her. One lives, one dies, etc. It's a tale of romance, okay? That's the kind of tale you'd expect the knight to tell. Well, we get a lengthy description of the wife of Bath, And how is she described in the general prologue? Okay, she lives at the town of Bath, one thing. She's a fantastic cloth maker. She challenges the best of Flemish cloth makers. Okay? What else? She's been on lots of pilgrimages. She's been to Rome. She's been to Jerusalem, I think, 3 times. She's been to Cologne. She's traveled the Trail of St. James in Spain. So why do you go on all these pilgrimages?
She's got a lot of sin to make up for.
A lot of sin to make up for. You know, you've earned a lot of air miles. Or you're really what?
Wealthy.
Okay. Not what I was looking for, but yeah. Really spiritual. I mean, Pope's got nothing on her. Super spiritual. What else? She's been married 5 times.
Lots of honeymoons.
Could be lots of honeymoons. Okay. What else? If she's really spiritual, what one thing that sometimes happens at church really angers her? When other women go up to the offertory in front of her, offertory to make an offering, she doesn't like that. Why? Well, she wants to be first in line. She wants all eyes on me. Okay? And then we're told, about the same part where we're told that she's had 5 husbands, she's gap-toothed. Everybody shuts their mouths, you know. So, big deal. So, you know, she doesn't have a good orthodontist. Guess what? She's English. You know, do I need to say more? Watch English humor. Watch English TV. What are the English known for other than bad food?
Bad teeth.
Bad teeth. Okay? Now, this was a sign in the Middle Ages called, it was a physiognomy sign, you know, the body. If these 2 teeth had a gap between them, it meant you were lecherous. You had a licentious disposition. You liked sex. Okay? Remember what we talked about the other day? Catholic Church and sex? It's bad. Even in marriage, it's bad. Have it, keep the race going, keep humanity clicking on along, but don't enjoy it. She does. In fact, she talks about it. She goes on this long tirade about how St. Augustine and all these writers of the New Testament, they're all just wrong. I mean, after all, if God created us this way, and there's pleasure involved, he must have intended it for that. Okay? So we get her prologue. And if you look at it, her prologue begins line 31 on page 331 and goes to line 856. So it's 825 lines. There I go again. Lines. Okay? Her tale begins at line 857. And goes to 1264.
The prologue longer than it is.
Prologue's 857 lines, and her tale's only 407. What prologue means before word. It's the stuff most people usually skip when they pick up a book. Like the preface. What's it mean? Prefacing. Pre, not important. Okay? We're not going to spend much time on the prologue. Why? Because what she spent her time in it doing? She goes after her husbands who, not all of them, but a couple of them especially, the last one, Jenkin, primarily, were anti-feminists. And notice, by the way, how she does just kind of seem to outlive all her husbands. Yeah, there's, some stuff about that. But what does she talk a lot about in terms of her relationships with her husbands? Who has the upper hand? She does. I mean, she lives. They don't. The upper hand might be, bam, you know, they're dead. Okay? So, let's skip a bit. Let's pick up with the actual tale. What kind of tale does she tell us? We just finished one, an Arthurian tale. In the old days of King Arthur, of which that Britons speak great honor, all was this land fulfilled of fairy. In the time of Arthur, fairies were all over the world, all over the land. Elves, if you want. The elf queen with her jolly company danced often, in the mead, etc., etc. Hundreds of years ago, not now. Why? 864, now can, that is able, no man to see none elves more. You can't see elves anymore, she's saying now. Why? Because of the great charity, that is love, and prayers of limiters, and you got a footnote, friars who are licensed to preach in a limited area in a parish or country, and other holy friars. Okay? Now, just before this began, look at the previous page, 344. Behold the words between the Sumner and the friar. Sumners, friars, they're both part of the religious caste, let's say, the religious community in England, as well as friars, monks, abbesses, nuns, priests. Well, who are some of these people? You have the nuns prioress. She has with her 3 priests. Okay? So nuns prioress plus 3 priests, they aren't included in the description of those who will tell tales. Okay? Nuns prioress, what else? We have a monk, we have a friar, we have a pardoner, we have a sumner, and we have a person. Right? So you have 6 members of the religious class, let's say. Not religious in that they're believers, religious in that they work somehow for the church or a church organization. Okay? Of all of them, there's only one that Chaucer says entirely positive things about. And it's him. He's also the lowest ranking of all of them. Okay? Watch the lecture about the general prologue, because there's some pretty interesting stuff about this. So what's she saying? Well, these limiters and these friars, they go about the land out of their love, and they do what? They say prayers, and they sprinkle the land with holy water. Well, what does that do to the elves? I'm melting. I mean, it drives them all away. So that now, there aren't any elves or fairies around. What's her point? Damn priests, friars, monks. Because if they didn't do that, we'd still have fairies and elves around. Okay? So, she says, now they're all gone. And it's thought, line 878, women may go safely up and down. In every bush or under every tree, there is none other incubus but he. Incubus, devilish spirit who would appear to women in dreams and thereby impregnate them. Yeah, here's a nice excuse for your pregnancy. No, honestly, honey, I had a dream, and in my dream, this thing came and slept with me. No, it wasn't George down the road. I promise, Okay? Oh, by the way, Chaucer isn't creating these. Incubus, this is a male, spirit that impregnates a woman in sleep. And then you have the succubus, which is the female spirit that comes and rapes men in their sleep. Okay, this is equal opportunity rape, if you want, in terms of the spirit world. So, he says, there aren't any of these things anymore. Women can now walk safely up and down the countryside by themselves, without guides and guards and such. There is none other incubus but he, and they will do him but dishonor. That is, who will do them nothing but dishonor. There is nobody who will harm women. Cool. Everything's fine, right? Everything's good. And it so happened that that's now, by the way. That's now, the time that the wife of Bath is speaking. Okay? But back during Arthur's time, he had in his house a lusty bachelor. Lusty doesn't mean our meaning of it. Like the guy was just horny as all get out. Lusty means pleasureful. A pleasureful young man. He liked a good time. Okay? Then on a day came riding from a river, and it happened he was all alone, as though he was born. You enter the world, what? Alone? Yeah, you have a mother, but it's you, pretty much. He saw a maid walking in front of him. So he crosses over a river, and there's a girl over there. Of which maid anon always means immediately or soon, maugre her need, despite her heed, despite her will, by very force, bereft her maidenhead. Fancy language, for he raped her. For which oppression was such outcry, clamor, and such appeal unto King Arthur. In other words, she went to Camelot and said, dirty SOB raped me. That damned was this knight for to be dead by course of law, and he should have lost his head. Notice that. Should have. It's almost like the wife of Bath was going, and if I were king at the time, we'd have chopped him up into little bits. Nobody would have. Peradventure, such was the statue then. But the queen and other ladies more so long requested the king, till he his life granted them in the place, and gave it to the queen at her will, at her desire. So, Guinevere and the other ladies go to Arthur and they go, no, don't kill him. Let us come up with something. Now it'd be merciful, Arthur go, off with his head. But, because Arthur can never really say no to Guinevere, okay? He says, okay, it's up to you. So she thanks him, and she says to the knight, thou standest in such array that of thy life yet hast thou no certainty. You don't know what I'm going to do you? And he's sitting there going, nope. What? That of thou hast no certainty, I grant thee life. You can live if you tell me, what thing is it that women most want? Just tell me. What do women... Notice, it's not what do most women want. What do women most want? What's the problem with that question? Well, what do you most want? And what do you most want? And what do you most want? And I'm going to end up with 10 different answers. Maybe I'll end up with 5. Maybe I'll end up with 2 different answers. But then what do I have? 50% living, 50% dead. And she says, and I'll give you a year and a day. They love that construction. A year and a day. I'll give you a year and a day. If you come back in a year, it's too soon. Come back a year, 2 days, you're dead. So, year and a day. Go search, learn a sufficient answer. So what's he do? Heads off to the Bodleian Library? No. What's he going to do? Ma'am, can you tell me what is it women most want? Gets an answer. Can you? And all the women he meets. But what happens when this one says something different than this one? Well, it's not going to work. He needs what? All women to agree. Yeah. Give it up, guys, because screwed one way or the other. So, woe was this night, and sorrowfully he sigheth, sighs, but he may not do what he wants to. And at the last he says, okay, I'll try. And we'll stop there because it's 11:05. I think we'll finish this on Tuesday.